Good afternoon and welcome to the Bugatti Owners Club and to Prescott. I have been given the fun of being able to introduce to you the Fast Ladies, or the Fast Ladies in plural. Lara Platman is my joint commentator in this introduction today to the theme of Fast Ladies. Her CV is considerably impressive and most relevant to our subject. She's a photographic journalist, radio drama which she's producing on Mildred Bruce. She's a Leica ambassador with those wonderful, wonderful cameras. But in this call of adventure, women took very extraordinary risks in order to reach the top. Few succeeded, in fact, and yet exceptional women are often superior to exceptional men. I thought you'd chuckle at that one. Little quote I found. The women chosen today, which is really from a cornucopia of pool of brilliant individuals, exhibits, I believe, the pioneering spirit as Amazons and intrepid individuals within a male-dominated sport and industry. So within our time restrictions, which we have to keep to the weekend, I'd like to pose to you the first question, Lara. Who would we like to select from the wonderful names that we have found together?
So, I have got a lot of names. I've got 10 names or 11 names.
We've
got Helle, Madame Junek, Jill Thomas, Marguerite Marouse, and Etienne. Let me just start, I think, with Helle.
Right, there's a grand name.
So, she's known as the Bugatti Queen, and quite apparent to start with her on this day, I think. I think I know her already from film sets and from cinematic scenes, although she's not had a film made about her.
No.
But I always picture her walking around with a leather suitcase from place to place after her very disillusioned affairs and relationships that she had.
Of which she had to have quite a number. Maurice Chevalier, but she was spurned by Louis Chiron, which we'll come to a little bit later.
We'll come to her in a minute. So she was a dancing queen in the casinos and already had seen motor racing at the age of 6 when Camille Dugas shot past her on the Paris-Madrid rally, and she really thought that she wanted to become a racing driver. It would be her get out, her passport to travel.
Correct.
And it was really. So her first car she bought in 1920 was a little small Citroën. Mm-hmm. And she, in her little circles of dancing and casinos and friends she made friends with Philip de Rothschild and the Coachelles. And along with learning to drive and learning to race, they taught her how to race. And she had a chance to race in a Bugatti. They got her into a Bugatti. And she was brilliant. She had the chance to race in the Grand Prix at Montlhéry and caught the eye of Etienne Bugatti and said that the colour of her eyes suited his cars very, very well.
In other words, she had sparkling blue eyes.
And so that carried on. And I think that really ought to have started off a film. It really should be her
agree.
film.
Absolutely agree.
But she had love affairs and friendships. She drove all over the world. She drove different cars. But we seem to know her for her Bugatti 35C.
Correct. And
it all went horribly wrong. She drove a German DKW in 1938, and with the womanizing Baron von Hanstein, known for his success with BMW, she...
and possibly women.
And possibly women. She just, that sort of scarpered her racing. Also, the war came. And so she hunkered down in Paris. She was captive in Paris, right? She was
part of the Gestapo and the Paris occupation by the Germans.
So she was there. And then after the war, she popped out again and started to do the Monte Carlo rally in a Renault 4C.
Correct.
And at the gala at the Monte Carlo rally, her so-called friends, Yvonne Simon and Anne Itier, sort of outed her to say that she'd had this relationship with von Hanstein.
And Louis Chiron, who of course lived in Monaco at that particular stage as an expat, took the view publicly to criticise that she may have had German involvement with the Gestapo And that really caused the demise of this wonderful young lady.
And she died desolate and alone in the south of France. And that's why I think of her with a little suitcase.
Yeah.
Anyway,
A jealous and unfounded rumour.
Should we move on?
Move on to number 2, Elizabeth.
We have Elizabeth, Madame Junek. Now, am I right in thinking that she was the first person to walk the course, do the reconnaissance and chalk out all the corner bends?
Absolutely
I don't
correct.
think anyone else did that before her. I think she was the first person to have the incisiveness to go around and do the reconnaissance so she could get the bends and the corners right. This is way before Jenks and the late darlings of Stirling Moss made their toilet roll contraption. What was that called? The Jenks contraption. They continued with the tulip maps for rallying forevermore. Anyway, so Junek did that to start with. She walked the course, and she had yellow. Every Bugatti that she had was in yellow.
Very much so.
But she didn't.
Daffodil yellow.
Did she win? Did she win at the Targa Florio? Because I think she had the
she went in
water
27
failure.
and 28, and there she was driving a Type 35B. But what was interesting, she took a Type 37 10 days before the race, and that is where she negotiated the Rennes and the course, so she knew it intimately.
And she was known as the queen of the steering wheel because
Yep,
she
it's a
just
lovely
got
expression.
round the bends really quickly, and I think that's superb. Her husband was a mechanic, and she did all the spannering for her husband, and he was a great Grand Prix driver, but died suddenly in the German Grand Prix.
Correct.
And she just stopped racing after that. She
Finished.
retired
Absolutely
straight
finished.
after that.
However, there's a lovely little link with the Tory Bugatti, is there not? He provided her with a car.
Which she took to Salomon.
Correct.
And to promote Bugattis in the Asia. So she carried on with Bugatti, but she died in 1994, which is so recent. I just think, why didn't I know her? How did I not know her? Anyway, let's move on. We've got to keep going. We've got another lady now, Jill Thomas, or previously known as Scott. I've got a picture of her, actually. I'm going to show you. Can you see over there?
Wearing the most beautiful outfit. Look at those little smart shoes, coloured fabric, a watch. I don't see the watches. Goggles and the lot. Very smart lipstick. She's actually matching the lipstick to her costume.
She's just completely brilliant. Now, this is photographed by Madame Yvonne, who used a brilliant Vivex camera. And the camera was a big square thing like this. Really big square camera. And she photographed... she was around at the same time as Cecil Beaton. And so she photographed all these debutantes in angelic angels, and she made them into mythological creatures. And so this is a pretty staid picture for Madame Yvonne, really.
We would have records of that in the Vogue archives.
There will be records in the Vogue archive, and I'm gonna go dig them out because I think that she's amazing. So basically, Jill Thomas, or previously Scott, was an heiress to a coal mining family, and she and her family lived right next to Brooklands. So being an heiress and Brooklands, they had the chance to just go racing the whole time. She raced a 4-lap race at the hearty speed of 105 miles per hour in a Grand Prix Bugatti.
Exciting.
Yeah. And
was she one of the few ladies to actually get the magical 110, or rather 120 and 130?
The 120 mile an hour badge at Brooklands. So in 1928, that's when she made her mark and got that 120 mile an hour badge.
Only 5 women were actually valued with 120 and 130 mile per hour circuit. So she certainly has some record.
She's got a good record. So they had a variety of cars, but they basically drove their Bugattis. Now, she was married to... Her first husband was William Bummer Scott.
I think that's a lovely name, because there's a cake manufacturer in Birmingham called Brummer Cakes, which are very smart, very beautiful puff pastry cakes.
Well... I don't know. Anyway, so she was married to William Bummer Scott, and they entered their first. She started racing in 1926 and entered their first trial in 1939. Pairball Bugattis, painted them black with emerald green wheels.
Wonderful.
Which I think is really nice.
Really wonderful.
Her eyes must be green. Her eyes must be green. Come on. So she followed. She raced the following number of cars, and she raced the double 12 with Ernest Thomas, and the ladies' handicap, another ladies' handicap. So
did this lead to an interest?
So they took flying lessons together, and they had
tied up in a tiger moth.
Yeah, they tied up. Now we've got to keep going because we've got so many people to get through.
Next one I have is Madame Margaret
Marousse. So she finished really well in races and the Monte Carlo Rally. She raced at Le Mans in 1930 and 1931 with Odette Sico in a Bugatti.
How old was she when she started racing?
She started when she was 41.
Pretty brave.
41. So she entered quite a few Grand Prix all over the place, Tunisia, and she crashed out of a race in Orly in Algeria in her Bugatti Type 51. So she raced raced a Type 40, a Type 51.
The thing that fascinates me is the boundaries, that there were no boundaries then. They travelled almost all over the world, apart from America, we're not mentioned at all. This is all European.
And Africa.
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary.
Northern Africa, European. So she and Odette raced together, and in 1930 they ran the 6-hour race, and they competed over 560 kilometres in their Bugatti, which is quite a lot.
Was that in Montluar?
No, that was in... Where was that? That was...
Whatever it was.
It was in Route Pavé.
Right.
Yeah, so it was a road race. She won the Coupe de Dame in many races. They had separate races, and she won the Coupe de Dame in 1933 at the Monte Carlo Rally, which of course is a few years after Mildred Bruce won her Coupe de Dame in 1927. Of course. She was the first woman to win the Monte Carlo Rally.
We have to have favourites.
Always. Now I've got to keep moving on because I
have next one, Anne Etienne.
So we have Anne Etienne.
And
now,
she ties in with Kay Peter.
She ties in with Kay Peter, but let's talk about Anne Etienne for the minute. Now, this is what she looks like. Look at that.
We weren't sure because a little later in this story we're going to give you an information again with regards to an element of French-German question.
So she married a Scotsman. She was a redhead, but the marriage didn't last very long. He wasn't very nice to her. She began flying at 31 and then started motor racing afterwards, so in 1926. She started with hill climbs and rallies. She won the Mont Saint-Héré hill climb, and she repeated that. In 1931, her first year in her Bugatti Type 37, Type 37, she was 7th in the Tunisian Grand Prix, 4th in the Circuit Dauphine, and 3rd in the Mans Grand Prix. So
very impressive.
So she's carried on. I've got loads and loads and loads of more races that she was in. The Type 37, the Type 39, in the Dieppe Grand Prix. She switched to the Type 51.
Yes.
In 1934. The following year, she continued to campaign the Type 51, but she then sort of moved to sports cars as well. Now, in 37, here we go, she moved to the revolutionary, streamlined German Adler Triumph Saloon.
This was part of the German propaganda brought in by Hitler, of course, where he could see the opportunity of producing cars that would have the world speed record, which we know was principally held by two Germans at that stage in Otto Junek and Mercedes. But the prestige of having a woman clearly was enormously important to
maybe
Hitler,
a British, maybe a French woman, Maybe a French woman.
Well, now, certain that.
So the month before, she had gone to a rally with Marguerite Marousse in Morocco, and they got caught in a sandstorm up the top of the Atlas Mountains.
This is the naughty bit.
And so she was racing in the cabriolet for the Hanomag team, and both Marguerite and Etienne were unaware that the German team were carrying out intelligence on the French over the mountains.
Correct.
Before drones. Anyway, up in the Atlas Mountains, they got caught, and Colonel Baron von Hanstein helped Etienne out, and the other one helped Marguerite out. They got into each other's cars and got them down the mountain. But when they got down to the checkpoint, they were back in the right cars again. But carrying on from that, Anne Itier and Hanstein had their affair. Now, that's the same affair, or different affair, that Helle Nice had had. Same person. Anyway.
But they...
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, after the hostilities began in Germany and France and the occupation, she was helping the children get out, and she also started the communications traffic corps. So she was helping the resistance.
Great.
But she'd had this affair with this German, so it's very, very mixed messages. Anyway, we need to keep moving. Got Kay Peter next.
Kay, which is tremendous.
Now, so Anne and Kay used to race together in the Austin. So now, I forgot that Kay was a Bugatti lady. But of course she was, because she painted her Bugatti the same colour as her overalls.
Correct. Very elegant.
Very elegant with her little freckles.
Yeah, she had pretty freckles and a little leather cap. Very lovely.
So now she raced a 2.5 litre supercharged Bugatti 35C.
Correct.
Which gained her most of her experience in the Bugatti. And she was good looking, slender. She was a Canadian ice skating queen, wasn't she?
She had real balance.
Real balance. And Henry Peter grabbed her and said, I'll have you. And
he was
took
quite
her
a
over
sour-faced looking man who was a senior gentleman at Brooklands.
I always thought he was a cad.
Well, cad leads us in another area. Off. But anyway, they were happily married.
They were, and they raced, and so basically he took over the threshold of Brooklands, and she raced a huge Delage as well,
Correct.
didn't she? Anyway, let's get back to Bugattis, and let's move on. Let's keep moving. We've got Eileen Ellison next.
The Delage that she drove was in fact Lord Howe. So there was a link there with here, where he was our very first president.
Oh, at the Prescott
Correct.
Hill Climb.
Correct.
So Kay Peter, Lord Howe, Prescott.
They were all in a fast-moving group.
The fast
very much
set.
so.
The fast
well, whatever.
set.
So I have next, we have a real blonde bombshell now.
Eileen.
Yes.
Now,
this is the one to make the boys smile.
Now, Eileen's interesting because she didn't come from a wealthy family.
No.
But she and her brother made her go racing and made her mad about racing. And she was one of the partners of Kay Peters in the Wakefield Cup.
Yep.
So she was good at racing, not from a wealthy family. She bought a second-hand Bugatti Type 37. And it makes me think, how much was a Bugatti then? I mean, how much was a Bugatti? It wasn't cheap, surely.
Well, in the 1939 International that we had here at Prescott, there were 4 Bugattis for sale, 2 Type 35s and 2 37s. And they were somewhere between £235 and 410, I think. But I can't do the translation equivalent.
It's quite a lot, though.
Let's say it's a little more than a house.
They bought 2 because one they used for camping equipment as a donor car when they went racing abroad. So her brother and her friend put all the stuff in the other Bugatti, and they went off, using it as a donor car, which is the same as how Duncan Pittaway and Tim Dutton did when they went down to Monte Carlo for the historic.
Correct.
They both drove down in their Bugattis and had another car come for a donor car.
Yeah. Wonderful. So nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. Anyway, so she did really well. She came 4th in the Albi Grand Prix. And 1936, she travelled even further in her Type 37 in the African Grand Prix.
I've got her down, and she worked and drove for the Singer Works Machine Company for a while.
Wow. Well, I'll have to investigate because she's quite new to me.
Publicity. You know? But there were also shots again for your Vogue where she raced for them. And was principally publicised for her exhibition of the cars. I'm
going to have a look. She's great. Anyway, she moved to South Africa with her husband and then to Jersey in the 60s.
So the sparkle went. We lost her.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Now, you wanted me to find you a glamorous lady.
I did indeed.
And
yes.
I think I found you one.
Good.
Although I've not seen a picture of her, of course. But Colette Salomon.
Right.
Now, she raced a Bugatti Type 37 in 1927. She was an entrant in the Course de Formula Libre de LACF.
Right. I'm becoming interested already.
And she was the winner of the first Journée Féminine de Automobile 1927, driving a Sansom. Active in the motorsport circuit in France in the 20s, But she was photographed for Vogue in 1927. But prior to taking up motorsport, she's been a dancer and made films.
How wonderful.
So she's got to be glamorous, right?
Now we're going to end on probably a violent end. I use the word violet because the lady is called
Violet Morris. The hyena of the Gestapo.
Correct.
So she didn't actually drive a Bugatti, but she was very instrumental in ruining the lives of some very, very important Bugatti drivers. So she was basically, Violet Morris was a Parisian Olympic shot put champion. And she strapped her boobs down to race.
Heavily built, I think is the word.
She strapped her boobs down to race. And there's two things there. She eventually had her boobs taken off. One of the first mastectomies, eh?
Correct.
But she said it was so she could get her boobs behind the steering wheel. But I think it was just because she wanted to look like a bloke.
And she did. She
looked
wore
like a bloke.
trousers.
She had cigars and she was a real, suit and shirt. So she raced her big Benjamin cycle car in the 1922 Bol d'Or, got fourth and a lap record. So she was good, she was fast. But she was VIP at Hitler's stand at the Olympics in 1936. And from then on end, she was fiddling with the Gestapo, I think. She was very effective in working against the resistance fighters, and amongst others, she brought down the English network of the automobilists, including, led by Charles William Grover and Robert Benoit. And so Benoit managed to escape by jumping out of the tractor he was taken from, but the others didn't survive, and the Peugeot racing mechanic wasn't lucky either. So the hyena of the Gestapo makes a mention for a terrible, terrible reason.
Moving on, I have Prescott entries and, if you like, a more contemporary view.
Yeah, so we go to 1946 now, and Sheila Derbyshire shot up the hill in 53 minutes 30 seconds. No.
Seconds.
30 seconds. 53 minutes. God, took an hour. In her Type 35B.
Correct.
Now, I don't know anything about Sheila Derbyshire, so I've got to start hunting about her because...
We haven't anything. We've gone to our archives. But leading on briefly, we have more modern. We have Julia Bandanza, Sarah Diffie, and Mags Diffie, who are all driving Type 35s, 35Bs and 37s. They hill climb here. They race all over Europe. And they're all elegantly dressed.
And Maria races in her pearls, much to the disgust of the race officials.
A string of pearls.
Yes, that's my ladies, Nick. That's my ladies.
Well, it's only a little soundbite of really what we have put together. So I think if we wind it up for this particular element here, I've got down the final note is pearls must be worn or else they lose their luster. We hope to bring that back through our introduction to you all. You will carry out your own individual investigations, but more importantly, if you'd like to have more, particularly from Lara, who's carrying out investigations, make contact through the BOC, Bugatti Owners Club, and we'll pop you through to Lara, and she can give you more information and references. So, thank you for your fun. Thank you for the interest.
Thank you.
Oh, it's always
We've
great.
gone way over time.
Have we? Well, never mind. We'll shut down now.